to it. There's a book. It's called Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview, and that's by William Lane Craig and J.P. Moreland. And that book is where I got most of these definitions and the chart on the back. So it's kind of like a textbook, but it's a good resource to use. So free will, determinism, compatibilism, and fatalism. These are things that are underlying beliefs that have a lot of impact on the rest of our beliefs. And what we're going to talk about today are the differences between free will, determinism, compatibilism, and fatalism. We're going to talk about naturalism and its combination with free will or determinism. And we'll talk about theism, free will, and determinism. Then we're going to discuss, so what? Why does it matter? What significance does this have? Why should we care about this? And then we'll get to questions regarding free will and determinism, or fatalism, or whatever else comes up. These have a large impact on every aspect of life, because we have to ask ourselves, why do I do what I do? Do I do what I do because I do it? Do I do what I do because I have no choice? Is what happens the case necessarily? These are important things because they will shape all these things. And I made a list of some of the questions. They're there on the back. Does God have free will? Did the devil have free will? Did Adam and Eve have free will? Who was the first unmoved mover? What does that question even mean? So we'll get to that in a bit. But first, what is free will? So free will, it's a question of Dennis's favorite topic, metaphysics. So what is free will? Does it exist? Do we have it? So philosophers define it as free will being the human being acts as an agent who is in some sense the originator of one's own actions, and in this sense is in control of one's actions. This type of freedom serves as a necessary condition for moral and, some would say, intellectual responsibility. Does that make sense? Dennis? That's a good question. And that is dependent on if animals have, well, I don't want to spoil it. It will depend on whether free will is true or whether determinism is true. So I don't want to spoil that just yet, but that's a good question. But it'll fall in the same category as humans. Whether if humans have free will, then how do they have free will? If animals do have free will, how do they have free will? So let's see. So agent causation. Does anybody know what that means? So agent causation is where the agent himself is the one making the choice. The agent is the one who is the cause. It's not something outside of the agent himself.
So is the agent the person we're talking about, or is the agent someone else who's forcing a causal factor on an individual?
It could be either. It could be, the agent would be the one.
The devil made me do it. Is the devil the agent in that case?
Right, right. The devil would be the agent, and the devil made me do it, right? Me would be the agent as well, a different agent, right? So the agent would be the one bearing the responsibility if the agent is doing the action, the agent would be the one bearing the responsibility. So the agent is the person himself.
The agent is the cause, or the agent is the influence?
So the agent would be the cause
The cause.
on free will, yes. Agent causation would be the
Means that the
agent is the cause.
Is the cause,
Yes.
not the influence.
An agent can influence things.
Difference between influence and cause.
Okay, so can,
English language.
right, no, that's a good question. So influence and cause. Influence and cause. Are these different or are they the same? Raise your hand if you think they are different. Okay. Raise your hand if you think they are the same. Raise your hand if you're not sure. Okay. So, if I tell you that I'm going to give you $1 million if you do 20 jumping jacks, and then you do 20 jumping jacks, did I cause you to do 20 jumping jacks?
No.
No. Right. Right. But if I
tell you I'm going to slug you, I'm influencing you. If I slug you, I'm causing something to happen.
right. Right.
So there's a force acting on something that causes something to happen.
Right.
Influence, if I see a naked lady, that's influencing me.
Right. But it won't cause you to go
It
and
won't cause me to
do something.
if I resist it.
Right. Right. Because you are the agent.
I am the decision maker.
Right. Right.
And I do what is in my best interests at the time.
Right. Well, it depends on you, right? If you want to do what's in your best interest, or if you don't want to do what's in your best interest, that would be a decision you would be making. But you would be, as the
I get to
agent,
that. I think people do what they think is in their best interest at the time that they act.
okay?
I don't think anybody,
So-
unless they're mentally disturbed, does something that doesn't seem to be desirable to them at the time that they do it.
Okay. So if you look down a little bit ahead, hard compatibilism. That is going to feed right into that. So let's come back to that in a minute, because that's a good point. It's a good question. And that seems to be what hard compatibilism is describing. So with agent causation, the agent is the cause. And if the agent is the cause, then the agent is the one acting, right? So what is an efficient cause? Has anyone heard of that term before, an efficient cause? Okay, so in Aristotelian causation, right, according to Aristotle, there were different types of causes. There were formal cause, final cause, material cause, efficient cause. And efficient cause is that by means of which an effect is produced. So the efficient cause of me, the efficient cause of this pen falling would be me. Right? I'm the one who's causing it. I'm the one causing it to fall, not something else, not gravity, right? I'm not the cause, or the gravity is not the cause of it falling. I am choosing to let it go, and it falls. So that's the efficient cause. This term efficient cause is very, very useful when talking about causes, because it gets to the very root, the initial source of the cause, right? What was the efficient cause of the door opening? Someone pulled it open, right? So when people on Calvinism or non-Calvinism, some type of non-Calvinist view, if they're discussing things, using the term efficient cause I think is going to be a huge help. But I don't usually hear people using that term in that discussion. But I think it would save a lot of time and clear things up quite a bit. So is everyone clear so far on free will? Yes.
Does the issue of moral agency weigh in on any of this stuff, or is that kind of a separate?
No, it definitely does.
Okay.
Definitely. Yes. Because that will depend on the cause, right? If someone is forcing you to, let's say it's morally wrong to break into a store. Someone picks you up and throws you through the window of a store when it's closed. Are you at fault for, did you break into that? Are you at fault? Did you choose to break in there? No. Someone did that. Someone caused that. Someone other than you was the cause of that, right? Would you be responsible for that? No. It would be like someone throwing a rock through. It would be a deterministic process. So so that moral responsibility is I mean, this is all about that. Yes.
So sorry if I missed this. Does efficient cause mean the last free will acting in a chain of causation?
Right. So where is the efficient cause in the chain, right? Yeah. It's basically it's not being caused to do it. It's the initiator of that causal chain.
Well, when you say initiator, he mentioned influence, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe an example would be a group of people are torturing you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
They started that causal chain,
Mm-hmm.
but whether or not you do it, you were the last free will agent
Mm-hmm.
before the thing happened.
Mhm.
So the efficient cause is whoever is the last free will agent.
Right. It's if someone is in your example, if someone's torturing you, trying to get you to do something, they're still trying to get you to do something, right? So if you do that thing under duress, it would be under duress. It'd be very heavily influenced. But would you be the one doing that thing? Yes. Would the other things be taken into account? Of course, but you would still be the cause of that. Yes.
I don't want to jump ahead, but are you going to get to the question of whether or not free will even exists?
Yes. Yes. So I wanted to make sure that we were clear so far. Free will? Okay. So determinism. Can someone read that definition?
The view that for every event that happens, there are conditions such that, given them, nothing else could have happened. For every event that happens, its happening was caused or necessitated by prior factors, such that given these prior factors, the event in question had to occur.
Right. So that's kind of a complex way of saying that the one doing it is not the efficient cause. It was caused by something else. It's not agent causation. So there's hard determinism. It denies the existence of free will, but determinism, I mean, some people want to get, if you want to get really nitpicky, like yes, there's some certain things that are deterministic, but what we're going to talk about here were certain things that are deterministic, like if I drop this, if I let go of this pen, it's going to fall, it's going to hit the ground, it's going to bounce, but that's a deterministic process, but I would still have the free will. If free will exists, I would still have the free will to let go of it so that this deterministic process could occur. So we're not saying that everything is either or, but the kind of determinism we're going to talk about is this here, because this is what it really is all about, the denial of free will. Do we have free will or do we not have free will? So an example, do a rock or a computer have moral or intellectual responsibility? I think we all know, obviously, they don't. So, yes,
How do we know that nothing else could have happened?
if it's a deterministic process.
Yeah, how do we know that? How do we know that nothing else could have happened?
Well, if it's deterministic, then that would be the case.
That's begging the question.
Which question?
Okay.
No.
It's an assumption, because you're assuming if I drop this pencil, it will fall, because every time I've ever seen it get dropped, it falls.
Mhm.
You got a 99.99999% probability, but it is not absolute, is it? How do you know that it's absolute?
No,
You
I'm
know that it's 0.1 probability.
I think that's the definition of determinism.
right. That's the definition of it.
Absolute.
Well, without intervention, right? Without intervention, or just it's talking about the process, the causal chain. The causal chain. Something else could interfere. I could drop it and then move this in front of it real quick and catch it. But
This is sort of correlating
that would
to
be-
the scientific method.
right. I mean, there are
I
processes.
make 9 million observations, and I can come to the conclusion that under no circumstances will that, if I drop this pencil, I have an infinite, almost infinite probability that it will fall,
But it might not.
but it might not.
Right.
Because then in determinism is denying supernatural ability.
No. There could be intervention.
How?
There are multiple causal chains going on, right? There are
But
multiple
nothing says
chains,
nothing else could have happened.
right, in that process. Right, this is, like he said, this is the definition. It's the definition of,
Isn't there a fallacy in that definition that says nothing else could have happened?
no, so it says, there are conditions such that given them, nothing else could have happened. So in those certain conditions,
So you may not know one of those conditions. You may know
Right,
99
right.
of them, but you may not know
in the
one.
conditions that nothing's going to interfere with this, then the causal chain would go through.
So if something else happens that I'm not aware of, it's because I didn't know that condition.
Well, whether you know it or not, something else could interfere with it. Is that what you're asking?
A logical example that says, I look at the grass is wet, I look up at the sky and it's raining. And I do that 3 or 4 times. And I come out the next day and I look at the grass, I don't look at the sky, I just say, it must be raining. And my wife says, no, stupid, I turned the sprinkler on. There was a condition that could have occurred and did occur that I was not aware of.
Right. But that's your knowledge of it. That's not the condition itself. Your knowledge of it wouldn't affect the condition.
So there could be a condition that I am not aware of, but this is
Right.
that
It's-
nothing else.
it's-
Nothing.
It's irrelevant to our observation of it.
Right.
Brian.
So there could be something I'm not aware of.
Yes.
So it sounds like for determinism, you're saying it's a philosophical assumption. So when you're saying nothing else could happen, we're starting axiomatically saying that's the case.
That's the case.
We're saying under these conditions,
And
right?
so
Under these conditions, right, then
Right,
this
so
will
you have
happen.
to define a system boundary and say, in this particular system where I know all these causes, it absolutely will go this way.
Right.
Is there a name for that basic framework without the philosophical assumption at the front end, like he was mentioning,
Like scientific theories,
eh,
right? There are causal chains,
well,
right? Like if I mix this chemical with this, then this result will happen.
kind of, but more like the dropping the pencil thing. I've just observed over time that mechanically, without some sort of will intervening, this is what will happen.
Right, given gravity, given that I let go, given that nothing interferes, given that the ground is there, given that the Earth's core is somewhere down that way, given these conditions, if these conditions are true, then it follows that then this will happen. If there's no interference, part of the condition, right, then if I drop this, then it will hit the ground.
I guess what I'm asking is it feels like there's something slightly different between determinism
There are, well, they're in naturalistic processes, they are deterministic, right? Natural processes.
Anonymous, you believe?
Well, not entirely. It depends on if naturalism is true, right? If naturalism is true, which we're going to get to, then that is going to affect that. Because if naturalism is true, then it's only, all that exists is only naturalistic processes, which would mean that it's all causal chains of just natural causal chains. No, I think it implies a closed system of causal chains. Dennis.
We beat this dead horse even further. Quantum mechanics tells us that it's not always gonna fall. Quantum mechanics says sometimes it won't,
Right.
theoretically.
So under the conditions of
Point one,
quantum mechanics, then it might be different. But under the conditions of not quantum mechanics, then maybe it will fall, right? Depending on the conditions, right?
That horse is dead.
Well, it is, and it isn't dead. It depends on if you're looking at it, right? Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only a few interpretations of quantum mechanics that require that everything is non-deterministic. So I think you're talking about, the most popular is the Copenhagen interpretation, is that right? And so there are other versions, interpretations of quantum mechanics that are deterministic.
Yeah, so with quantum mechanics, it's randomness, that not everything has a cause. And I was going to include that, actually, but I just didn't think there'd be time to include quantum mechanics, as it's a kind of a deep hole.
Richard
But,
Feynman once said, anybody who says he understands quantum mechanics is talking. Nobody really knows.
yeah, I've looked at multiple universities' websites on quantum mechanics classes, and the professors, every one of the professors that I've read the curriculums of, they were saying that, this is a couple years back, but they were saying that they don't even understand it. And I was thinking, well, why are you going to teach it then? Why would I want to take that class?
It's there, but nobody completely understands it, but it does exist.
Right. Well, yeah, maybe, but yes.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but yeah, I would say that naturalism leads to determinism because you only allow for natural causes.
Right. So I think a lot of these questions are really good questions, and we're actually going to get to some of this, so we're jumping ahead a bit. So what I might try to do is try to push through some of this, and then we can revisit back to these. So just kind of mark down where your questions are, so we can definitely come back to them. But is everyone good so far on free will and determinism? At least pretty clear? All right, so compatibilism. Compatibilism is, I'll sum it up. Basically, it tries to make both true, right? It tries to leave room for both. We have free will, and our choices are determined. So does that make sense?
Calvinism is?
It depends on the Calvinist that you talk to. I've talked to Calvinists who believe in libertarian free will. I've talked to Calvinists who believe in determinism and compatibilist Calvinists. So it kind of depends on, there's different types of that.
have you read John Calvin?
Some, not much. But yeah, I think Al has quite a bit. Al could probably give a detailed explanation of that stuff. But so the hard compatibilism. Compatibilism is free will or free choices require determinism because free choices are determined by one's character, beliefs, and desires. So, like some people would say, we have free will but our free will choices are caused by what we desire to do the most. Whatever we desire the most, that is going to not just influence our choices, that is going to bring about our choices. Yes,
So what are those desires determined by? What are those beliefs determined by?
exactly.
You get like an
Exactly.
equation of necessity,
Mhm.
you end up in the same situation that you were in before.
Exactly. It takes the problem back another step, right? What was the cause of that? So is compatibilism, right? Is this hard compatibilism, is this compatible with free will? Is this compatible with agent causation? Is hard compatibilism compatible with agent causation, where the agent himself is the cause of the choice being made? Brian.
It sounds like no. I mean, I may not be entirely understanding this, but it seems to me free choices and determinism are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Anybody else agree? Disagree?
I don't know if I'm right, but because it's still the character of the person making that choice. It's still you. It's still.
Right. It's going to come back to these, right? Influence versus cause. It's going to come back to that. So if you have a strong desire where this desire to do X far outweighs your desires, any other desire you have to not do X, what follows from that? That you will do X, or that you have a good chance of doing X, but you might not do it?
But it seems like if we work from our definition of determinism, it says that you will do X.
Right. So it depends.
I agree that it seems like they're mutually exclusive. I seem like compatibilism is just like they want to have their cake and eat it too. They
Right.
don't want to say, people don't want to say we don't have free will, but they really think we don't.
Right. So it seems kind of ironic that it's called compatibilism when it seems incompatible with free will and with determinism. It seems incompatible with both, right? So what about soft compatibilism? Right? Soft compatibilism is where it's possible but unlikely we have free will. So free choices do not require determinism, but free choice is at least compatible and consistent with determinism. So the truth of determinism cannot be used as an argument against free will. So that's where it's kind of sounds like they're not sure, right? Soft compatibilist, they want to leave room for both. But as we've seen, and as you all have pointed out, rightly so, these free will and determinism, they're not compatible. Why? Because there's a difference between the influence and the cause. Dennis, did you have a question?
I was just gonna think I'm gonna agree with him, but you either have free will or you don't.
Right.
It's either determined or it's not. It's a compatibility thing. It just sounds like
It sounds like a lack of understanding of what these actually are, right? Yes, Brian.
I'm not sure I'm following the definition of soft compatibilism. Is there a way you could reframe this definition? I guess I'm not quite getting it and its distinction.
Yeah, so soft compatibilism, it's where they're not sure, basically. They're not sure, they want to leave room for both, and it kind of sounds like a lack of information, just an uncertainty. They want to leave room for both, but they think they're both compatible. Like, see that second line there, but free choice is at least compatible, consistent with determinism. So they think that they're consistent, that there's not a contradiction there.
So they're agnostic on determinism, but they lean in that direction, and they lean in the direction of determinism?
They think they're both compatible, yeah. So they think both happen. They think, yes, we have free will. We are. I think it's really from a root of lack of understanding of the contradiction there.
Do they appeal to mystery when they talk about how those two can?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, how could Adam and Eve, who are good, choose to sin? That's
Yeah. Could someone who's good choose to sin, right? That's a good question. Well, someone who's holy, is it possible for someone who's holy, right, morally perfect, to sin? Well, it depends. We could go down that rabbit trail of how do we define moral perfection, or is it? Yeah. Yes.
Does that mean in soft compatibilism, can I assume that you're trying to say you have an equal likelihood of doing A or B?
No.
You're influenced by something?
It tries. All soft compatibilism is they want to leave room for both, and they aren't sure about either one. That's basically the gist of it. I mean, it's kind of I think it's a less significant one. We don't really have to worry about hard versus soft compatibilism per se. Just compatibilism altogether is really a matter of free will and determinism are both what happens. Both of these, hard and soft compatibilism, both want to affirm that free will and determinism are both true, that we have free will, that we are the cause of the choices that we make, and something else is the cause of the choice.
The cause, not the influence.
Cause, right. So fatalism. That basically, for compatibilism, to sum that up, it's basically free will and determinism are compatible. There's no contradiction there. And we've seen rightly that it's been pointed out that it is not compatible. So fatalism is a less popular one. It's the view that everything that happens does so necessarily, and therefore we cannot do anything other than what we do. So necessarily, so that's the key word there for fatalism. That whatever happens, happens necessarily. Yes, Brian.
It looks like fatalism and actualism are two sides of the same coin, and they're synonyms, in fact. Is there
Right.
a distinction between the two?
It's only what actually happens is possible, but what's possible to happen, it depends on what's fated, right? So they're very, 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 very similar,
Okay,
right?
so actualism is a subset of fatalism, where it seems like in fatalism,
In
what the
actuality, right.
cause was, like, say God fated us to do things, he had choices about what he could have fated us to do. Actualism sounds like it says, not even God had a choice in what he fated us to do, it could always and only have been this one line of events.
Yes, basically with fatalism, it's not, I mean, if this definition is true, which I got from the philosophy textbook, it's that it is necessarily the case. So that means that God could not have done something different, right? It means nothing else could have happened. Yes?
If I roll a dice and it comes up as a 6, would the fatalist say that the only possibility that dice could have done that would have been
Yes.
Like, it was impossible that it could have been 1, 2, or 5.
Right.
So it implies that it was predetermined.
This goes with,
It
well, it
implies
goes
that
well with
it was
determinism, doesn't it?
predetermined that 6 would have come up, and there's nothing that can be done to change it.
Right.
Something has been set in motion, and that's the way it will be,
Right.
and you can't change it.
Right.
I can't change it, God can't change it, that's.
But if you try to change it, then you would be trying to change it because you are out of necessity.
If I try to change it.
Because everything that happens on fatalism does so necessarily. It's not an option. Every thought you think, it would be necessarily true. You would necessarily think that thought. You could not think anything else. Dennis.
What's the difference between fatalism and determinism?
Good question. Anybody have an idea?
Seems like they're the same too.
Because nothing else can happen. And if nothing else can happen, then that's predestined. I hate to use that word, but that's the way it is.
Well, predestined is different than predetermined, right? Predestined would be the destination.
I don't want to get into that.
So predestination would be talking about predeciding the destination, right? Predetermined would be to determine something, to decide something ahead of time, to set something in motion ahead of time.
Predetermined, then that means I'm on a path, and that path tells me where I'm destined to end up. And nothing else can happen, so I can't change it.
On fatalism or determinism?
On actualism, on.
So, right, well, so determinism
Because I can't
and
conceive
fatalism,
anything outside my human reference point. Only what actually happens is possible, like you said. I think this because I can't think anything else. I
Right.
can't transcend my human reference point.
right, so
So
who
the
in,
path that I'm on, I can't change that path because I don't know that the other path exists.
right, and whatever you would know out of deterministic processes, right?
If I did know, then that wouldn't be fatalism or actualism. I'm sorry.
Well, determinism, who in here can see the relation between determinism and fatalism?
They sound like the same thing.
I can't say difference.
Yeah. So there's one difference one main difference right here. So if God is the cause of our choices, or if God causes all of our desires to be what they are, and our desires cause our choices, then that would not mean we have free will. But if God could have caused our desires to be something else, and we could have done something else, then would that happen necessarily? No, because necessarily leaves no room for any other possibility, right? Something is either possible, it's impossible, or it's necessary. Does that make sense?
So determinism just literally adds to the phrase caused or necessitated.
You said determinism?
Yeah. In the definition of determinism, its happening was caused or necessitated.
By prior factors, right? It's necessitated by the prior factors given the structure, right? So it doesn't mean that nothing else could have happened, right? It's determined or necessitated by the prior factors. So if those prior factors could have been different, then it wouldn't be fatalism.
So it sounds like the distinction between determinism and fatalism is whether or not God had free will to set the course.
Right. If there's some unmoved mover, if there's no God, and if there's no God, then I don't think anything would exist. But let's just say, well, we're about to get to naturalism. because I knew that naturalism would feed right from this. So let's jump right down there, because that'll answer this. So naturalism, free will, and determinism. It's right at the bottom of the first page. So is naturalism compatible with free will? Well, on naturalism, there is nothing that exists other than the physical. Only the physical realm, physical objects, physical things exist. So on naturalism, there would be the universe would be a completely closed system with no influences outside of material things. So what would that mean? That would mean that everything is deterministic processes. Dennis, if you're shaking your head, then you disagree with Sam Harris.
Well, now we're getting into really like free will.
Mhm.
Is it possible? I'm a naturalist. I'm an atheist. I'm a naturalist. I don't believe anything supernatural.
Right.
But you can't tell me that I can't get up and walk out that door.
Right.
But there's a lot of research, credible, valid scientific research that says it's already, I hate to use the word predetermined, but that free will doesn't exist. And there is research out there that says it. I find it hard to square what I think I can do. You can't deny that.
Right.
Deny the research.
Yeah, so I can't remember the name of the guy right now. I thought about including him on here, but again, I didn't for the sake of time, but I don't remember his name, but it's the most popular experiment that drew those conclusions. And, right, well, this one was the most well-known. I just can't think of the guy's name. But it showed that the person made the decision before they were aware that they made the decision to do something, to hit a button or whatever it was. And so people were saying, hey, that shows that determinism is true. This person didn't know that they did this. But that's not the case, because brain signals and brain muscle function, those travel at a finite speed. So it makes total sense on dualism that someone would make a decision, their mind, the person himself, the agent, would choose something, and then the physical brain state would be aware of that, and then the time it would take to get down to the muscles to actually do that thing, to push the button.
That's an argument, certainly. It's about, those experiments don't necessarily prove the non-existence of free will. They infer it. They say that it puts it in doubt.
Well, that's exactly the sort of thing we would expect to see if we have free will. So I don't think that's, I mean, the guy who did the experiment, the guy himself who did the experiment, wish I could remember his name though, he didn't come to that conclusion.
Well, it doesn't matter what his conclusion is.
Right.
The data's there, and we can draw your own conclusions.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's the most well-known one, and the guy who did it didn't come to determinism conclusion. But this feeds right into the next question. On naturalism, what causes our actions? Al?
Yeah, it's all natural causes. That's why.
Your brain state, right?
Yeah,
It's
and even if you feel like it was free will, it's just chemicals in your brain making you feel like it was.
yeah. So on naturalism, if you think you have free will, it's because your body and chemicals and your brain state is causing you to believe that, right?
I had a good quote from J.P. Moreland, distinguishing between agent causation and efficient causation.
Mhm.
That and now I'm trying to forget what the quote was. There was something about okay, yeah, but he's saying if you, something about T, that it can be explained either by chemical theory or that
Yeah, so if quantum mechanics, right, is just random stuff, then, okay, your choices are just random,
Yeah.
right? They're just randomness. And therefore, what kind of truth value would they have? Your thoughts, your beliefs. What truth value would they have? How much confidence should we place in our beliefs, in our thoughts, if they are determined, caused by chemical reactions in our body, in our brain, or if they're just the results of randomness? I don't see how we could have confidence in that. But then how could we have confidence that we've properly understood that we can't even have confidence in them? It seems to have some serious problems. So what about theism, free will, and determinism? Does this do any better than naturalism, free will, and determinism? No? No, Dennis? So is theism compatible with free will? Oh wait, we didn't answer that question on naturalism. Is naturalism, or did we? Is naturalism compatible with free will? Because it's just chemical, physical processes causing everything. There's no agent causation.
Yeah.
So is free will, agent causation, compatible with naturalism? Brian?
Do you have a definition for naturalism and theism? I see it for the other.
Not on the outline, but I mean theism, the belief in God, and naturalism, the belief that only physical things exist, in a nutshell. So,
Difference between supernatural. You take supernatural out of it, and you got naturalism.
well, natural would be just natural things, nature, physical things, the physical object. Theism would
Supernatural into whether it's your God or the Hindu God or
So the existence of anything immaterial, the existence of anything immaterial is incompatible with naturalism.
So the
So-
question then is free will an immaterial thing? Is that the question and answer?
Very good question. That comes down to what is the agent? What is the person, right? Is the person a body and brain combination? Or something else, something immaterial? So we're going to get to that. Who is the agent in agent causation? The person, right? We're going to get down to that right down there. So I'll put a star next to that so we don't forget. Because that's going to make all the difference in the world, right? But is theism compatible with free will?
theism is compatible with anything.
Not with anything? Well, on free will, do we have a soul? Do we have a mind? Right? Didn't Jesus say, love God with all your mind? Right? According to Jesus, he thinks we have a mind. Right?
Well, the soul and the
So-
mind aren't the same things.
Well, whether the soul and the mind are the same thing or not, either way, it would be something immaterial. So we don't even have to discuss that issue right now. It's if either one exists, then they'd be something immaterial.
No, mind is not immaterial.
So what is a mind?
The mind
If it's not something immaterial?
process carried on by the mind. It's electrochemical, biochemical, and physical.
Right. So on naturalism, that's true.
Yes.
On naturalism, that's true. But when people talk about the mind, that's not identical with the brain.
I thought it's a little
I
tempting
disagree.
to say mind in the scientific community, 'cause it's all the brain does.
Yep. So there's exactly right. So yeah.
So-called hard question of science. The mind is a process carried on in the brain, like digestion is a process carried on by your stomach and your small intestine. It's a process. It's not a thing.
Right. So, science, philosophy. So, the mind, right, that's the term that philosophers will use. So the mind. There's philosophy of the mind. That's a philosophical area to become an expert in. Right. The brain. That's what science or some scientists want to make these the same thing. But are these the same thing? The mind is the agent. The mind is the person. The mind is the person. The brain is not. On theism. And yes, Brian.
So it almost sounds like anytime anybody uses the word mind, you need some sort of disambiguation, whether or not you're talking about what Dennis is talking about, which sounds like an appropriate definition. It's a process, a naturalistic process running on the brain. That'd be a fair definition of mind, I think, for a naturalist. But you were saying there was also a definition for mind that a theist would use that would be different than Dennis's definition.
Oh, it's mind. Mind is very different than brain.
But that's true for Dennis as well.
Yes, it's true. It's different. It's different for him too, because the mind is the result of chemical processes in the brain. So without the brain, there's no mind.
Exactly.
Right, on naturalism. But on theism, can there be a mind without a brain? Influence would be,
Theism is influence and there is no cause in theism?
influence would be,
Externally.
okay, influence would be if you are reading the Bible and you think, hey, this is a good idea. This is interesting. Okay, God really loves me. I want to do good. That would be an influence. If the devil's tempting you to do something bad, that would be an influence. Do you have to do that thing? Is it necessary? Do you have to give in to that temptation? No.
You have a definition for theism here.
Right.
In theism,
Wait, where do I have a definition for theism?
you talk about theism, free will, so theism compatible with free will.
Mm-hmm.
In theism, will theism allow for external causes?
External causes. Well, God,
Some cause outside of myself.
to make
Bigger
our
cause.
choices? No.
No, not to make our choices, to get to do something.
Right, to cause us to choose to do something, right? No.
Okay, so it's all influence.
I mean, unless you believe God is causing us to do everything we do.
It's making
That
my
would be determinism. Right, who is making your hand move? You or God or
I think I am, but I'm just
Right.
asking your definition
Right.
of theism.
Well, I didn't define theism. I didn't define theism here. Theism is just, but it's just the belief in God. We are theists, we believe in God. Atheists, you're going to disagree on this definition, but traditionally, atheism has been the belief that there is no God. Agnosticism is lack of belief either way. So, on theism, what causes our actions? Well, we do. Why? Because we are held morally responsible for them. If God is just, then is it just to condemn someone as guilty of doing X when they didn't do X? Well, no, right? If you are the cause of that choice to do X, then you are held responsible for doing X.
So I'm kind of confused here between theists and atheists.
Mm-hmm.
Do atheists assume influence or cause?
Sam Harris, he's probably the most popular atheist. He is a determinist. So, cause.
So he thinks everything that we do is from an external cause
Right.
forcing upon us.
Right. External cause or causing different things, internal causes from our brains, making us do what we do. So, this feeds right in, right? The existence of and origin of evil, the sovereignty of God, right? Predestination and election, the justice of hell, God's foreknowledge of contingent free acts by human beings. These things all come into issue here, right? If we have free will, or if we're determined to do all that we do, caused by something else, then how do we sort this stuff out? So, what do you think? So what? Why does this matter? Well, it matters a lot. Whether you're a naturalist, whether you are a theist, whether you are something else, it matters a lot. Why? Because it has to do with things like blameworthiness, praiseworthiness, as we've talked about, right and wrong, what's virtuous or villainous, moral responsibility. Is that necessary for free will? We talked about that, right? Human ability. Are we able to influence? Are we able to do something other than what we do? Or do we do what we do necessarily? Are we the efficient cause of what we do? Or are we caused to do what we do by something else? Are we able to think, reason? Do we have rationality? Are we able to be thinking beings? Are we thinking beings? Those are big deals. So that's why this is important. And then questions regarding free will and determinism. These are important. Does God have free will? I think yes. Who in here thinks God does not have free will? Okay. So I think we all are on the same page there. Now, this might be a little more controversial. Did the devil have free will when he fell? Did Adam and Eve have free will when they chose to disobey God? When they chose to eat from the tree? I mean, when God said, you did this, he seems to be talking about who did it, which was them. If they did it, then they caused that choice. They were the cause. Who was the first unmoved mover? Well, that would be God, right? If God, even if determinism is true on theism, God would still be the first unmoved mover. God would have free will, but all of the things that happen naturally or in the physical world would be him causing those things to happen. So who is the agent in agent causation? Who is the person? What is a person? So is a person the mind or the body-brain combination? Yes. So let's see, A and B. So immaterial, mind, body, brain. So the person, is it this or this? Well, think about it like this. Could you imagine waking up in another body? Could you imagine waking up as a horse? Right? Is that logically possible?
Yes.
Dennis, yes. Dennis, yes.
You could transplant, you could put his brain in, say I'm dead, my body's still functional, my brain is dead. You could put his brain in my head, theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would be literally him.
Okay. So if you are able to do that, right? If that's possible, right? If that's possible to imagine that, to wake up in another body, then can you be your body, brain? Is that the person? Can that be the person? Can that be you? Well, what if this is true? What if you are your body, brain? Can you wake up in another body? Well, no, you can't. But you can if you're immaterial, right? Because it doesn't matter, regardless of your body and brain. You are still. You could wake up and imagine, hey, I'm in a horse body. So A and B have different properties. There's certain things here that are possible that are not possible here. So what does that mean? It means that this and this are not the same thing. You are not your body and brain. Have I just confused people? Does that make sense?
I thought of the movie Freaky Friday.
Yeah. I mean, there you go, right? It's something that it's imaginable. It could be, right? It's not a logically incoherent concept, but this is logically incoherent. If you are your body brain, how could you wake up in another body brain? You couldn't. You would be the same body brain. So the properties are different. So they cannot be the same. You as the person cannot be the body and brain. I'll tell you what I can do. Alvin Plantinga talked about this. I can link the video to the Solid Ground Facebook page for anyone who wants to look at that in more depth, the point that he's trying to make there. It's a good explanation, but might have to listen to it a couple times. I did. So, yes?
With regard to what this was talking about, if my brain was transplanted
Mm-hmm.
surgically into his body, then he's saying, in effect, you would then be predisposed to do those things which my brain is predisposed to do.
What I'm saying is that this body,
Yeah.
your brain in it,
Yeah.
is gonna do what this brain tells
What
you.
the brain, and my brain is, if my brain is predisposed to do certain things, I have certain genetic characteristics.
If your brain is the cause, if your brain states are the cause,
You would
then that's what would
act
matter.
according to those things in my brain, and that falls under what, under what he's saying is,
Did you see the movie?
It's determined.
no, I didn't.
So it's determinism. It's determinism versus free will.
I didn't see it, no. But where do you fall, A or B?
Well, yeah, Dennis falls here.
Dennis falls under B.
Yes.
Okay, in that situation, what you're talking about.
Well, on naturalism. On naturalism, you are the body brain. Nothing immaterial exists. So immaterial mind is not even an option on naturalism. Both of these are options on theism. If we're deterministic, then okay. But if we have an immaterial mind, like dualists, then
You're saying it's either A or B.
well, yeah, these are incompatible. You cannot be. The person
I was just
is
trying to
either A
understand.
or the person is B, but these are not the same thing because they have different properties. So it would be A equals not A, or sorry, it would be like X equals not X. Yes.
I agree with the argument you're making. I'm definitely in the A category myself. I think what you're going to run into is people are going to look at this B category and they're going to redefine body and brain. They're going to isolate exactly what composes you as a human being and say that this is the sufficiently,
Right.
this brain, let's say it's the brain, the cortex, whatever it might be, that is sufficiently Michael Earhart, and if we can copy that and put it, we lack the technology to do it today. Theoretically, could we do it where we put my head in your body,
Right.
then I become you. So I feel like they're just going to dance around the definitions in B to the point that they can have their cake and eat it too, without addressing
Right.
the argument that you're trying to make.
Yeah, and so this shows that they're not the same, right? It just shows the possibility. The possibility here does not exist here. So these are not the same. So they're not the same. Or sorry, here. The possibility here that this has with this is not possible between this and this. So this is not the same as.
I think they would still argue that a person could be, if you could capture what composes a person, it would still be material. That's the issue. I don't think it answers the.
Oh yeah, they're gonna differ on that. Now we're really running out of time, unfortunately. But if you all want to give me some feedback afterward, or let Scott know if you want to continue this next time, I can ask Scott if he's okay with that, or if you want to move on to something else, just let me know or let him know, and we can kind of go from there. But just to sum up real quick, what we've talked about so far, free will, you are the cause of your choices. Determinism, you are not the cause of your choices. Compatibilism, both are true. You are and you aren't the cause of your choices. Fatalism, you can't do anything else. Everything happens necessarily, right? We've seen that that's not true. We've seen what effects this has on naturalism versus theism and why it matters. And we got into some questions about this stuff, and we see how many things this involves. It involves so much. And we could talk about this for so long because it goes so deep. And it's really an exciting topic, I think. It's a lot of fun to talk about and think about. So I'm going to just officially, we can dismiss, and hopefully we'll see you all next week. But if there's more questions, feel free to talk to me afterward. All right?